Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it.
We'll just do it this way. Oh, we won't either. Now we're on screen, not meaning to be.
The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of light spinning from their mouths. Stop looking, listen for a little while. Pay no attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. Program reality, double thing duality, put upon the face of all mankind. Our numbers up and the dead for a time. Go along to get along in the tide by the siren song. The flames are empty and the crypts are cracking open. The horde's upon you and you stand there frozen, waiting for the word. Stand in line and wait your turn. Don't follow the strings to find out who is pulling. Just drink your poison, keep on laughing and drooling, eating your own flesh. The master always knows what's best. Worldwide genocide. The overlords are hungry parasites. They point the finger and the eagles fly. Raining fire, children die. Starving plague, paralyzed. Pile of bodies rotten, covered in flies. But no one wants to talk about it. It's safer not to talk about it. I cut my strings, no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. It is Sunday, September the 17th, 2023, this Constitution Day, and we come to you on
Does this constitute a fun episode?
It constitutes our 100th episode, I'll tell you that.
Oh,
Joe in the chat there congratulating us on the 100th episode. We've actually done close to 200 videos, counting all the Thursday night and Wednesday night shows that Tim and I have done. But this is our 100th titled episode, themed episode. That's not just a news and current events roundup. So we're pretty excited about that, considering I think it was only a third of podcasts make it past.
any?
Well, no, only a third of them make it past like 3. And then only like 1% make it past 20 episodes. So if you're looking for quantity over quality, we got you, baby. You're in the right place. Be sure and like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share it around with somebody that you think might enjoy it. Tim's not with us tonight, but he'll be back in the near future. Sometimes those Tims just need a day off, and it's one of those days. So we'll see him soon. And but I just surprised Dustin with the title for the episode, or with the theme for the episode. Yeah. And I knew, though, because I thought about earlier, I was like, man, I got to tell him what I'm doing tonight. And I was like, I'll get a hold of him here in a little bit, because it was like right after you got off work. And I was like, I'll get a hold of him here in a little bit. And then I ended up forgetting. But I remember thinking at the time, well, Dustin, this is the kind of thing he can get into and talk about without having too much prep. And as I told him about it,
have prep. Even when you tell me, I'm like, okay. And then it's like something happens, I'm like, I didn't get a chance to look up anything.
Well, but this thing is, I mean, this is all going to be pretty subjective, and it's going to be, I would like to have some participation from you all, anybody who lives in Appalachia, which I know a lot of y'all do. We got a lot of folks out on the west coast too. Hopefully Sean has made it down to Tennessee. He's not quite in the Appalachians, but he's going to be over here in East Tennessee. So hopefully he's made it down there. We haven't heard from him in a while. But if you're out there in the chat, say hello. Go over to the description of the video click on the Rumble channel. Go down there and follow us on there. We only got 13 followers on Rumble, but if we can get up to 100, we can live stream on Rumble, and then YouTube won't be the only place. Also, I've got us a Twitter, or I guess it's x.com now, because Tim thought I was looking at porn because I had x.com on, and he's like, oh no, I forgot that's what Twitter is. But I got us a Twitter account, one of the premium paid accounts, because I thought we were supposed to be able to live stream on it, but it doesn't appear like you are.
Oh.
We may be able to upload some hour-long videos on it, which is cool and all, but most of our videos are over an hour without even trying. We have to, cut a column at, an hour or two to get out of here in time, but... Mm-hmm. But anyway,
unless we throw like our weird little short clips on there.
Yeah, we haven't done any of those in a while. We need to.
Yeah.
Hey, if you audience members want to clip anything and pop it up there for us, if we say something that you find particularly endearing,
especially in the last episode, when we hit the moon, and I was, and Tim was talking about butts, and I was like, but is it full of cheese? And he got real tickled, and he had nothing to say over it. That'd be a good clip.
If you can catch Tim speechless, that's a good clip. What was it Tim told me the other day that? He cracked me up. He caught me off guard. It was I can't remember. We were recording it at his house the other day, and he's good for these real quick, witty things that are just out of left field. I mean, it's like you can tell something just absurd occurred to him, and he just said it and made a joke about it. And like, it's one of those things where it's like you're not in on the joke, but when he makes the joke, it kind of, you see what his thought process was. You're like, oh, that's fucking hilarious. So Tim's good for stuff like that. Anna, thank you. Glad to have you with us. Let's see here. Dalton up there, he's up in northern Appalachia, so he could probably attest to or contribute to this in some way. But even if you're not in Appalachia, you could definitely come across some high strangeness. Right? It's Is
that when you find a wook in the woods?
Well, yeah.
Some high strangeness?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't know.
Because they're weird and they're always high.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it could be. It could. I mean, I'm sure. Hell, that guy they ran into on the Appalachian Trail, that guy that was murdering everybody, that probably seemed like high strangeness at the time. That psychopath that was up there several years ago at the knife, and man.
That's why I don't understand why people do that stuff like completely like without any. So people don't have knives or anything. I know. It's like, how? Dude,
I was up there. Me and some friends of mine. We were camping on. We were on the Appalachian Trail, and we were camping at the Iron Mountain Shelter, and it's probably, I don't know, just a few miles from where we sit. It's probably a couple of miles up the ridge of the Iron Mountain as you go up around the lake. And we were there, and there were some campers or some hikers coming through, and they stopped, and they're like, "What are you doing?" Like, we're cutting up kindling to make a fire. Like, why do you have a knife? It's like, how are we going to cut up kindling without a knife? And they were like, they didn't want to stop at the shelter because we had a knife, and we all had knives and other things too, but they just freaked them out so much. And that was not the only person that we encountered that said something about us having knives, because we had fixed blade knives hooked to our belts, because we were taking a 2-day
It's like,
hike over the mountain.
Heard of bushcrafting? It's like it's a bushcraft knife.
Yeah,
it's like you can use it to
for almost anything.
Yeah, like you can get, like you say, get kindling for it. It's like worst case scenario. If you have something to hit with it, you can use it as an improvised axe.
You can stick it down in you can split kindling and whack it with another piece of wood and split it into pieces. You can cut if you needed to. We didn't do it this time, but you could cut plant fibers and make cords or ropes out of them, and vine fibers and all kinds of good stuff you can do with a good knife. I mean, that's your number one survival tool, I think. I mean, if
kind of one of the reasons why we've been so successful as a species is the creation of the knife.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we don't have any natural.
We
we don't have any natural self-defense like most animals do.
Right.
We don't have sharp teeth. We don't have claws.
And that kind of makes people think, leads people to wonder how we even got here. It's like, how did we survive before tools? I mean, was it just that were we descendant of something else? Were we here for a long time? And that's kind of one of that seems like a good way to get into the topics of tonight, because the idea of the old gods of Appalachia, it goes back to, that's the old gods of Appalachia is a new podcast. It's a horror podcast, but it's based on the Lovecraftian mythology of the great old ones, which is kind of based on the old mythology of the world and kind of what would you call it? The more of the ancient religions that are kind of hidden from view. And Lovecraft made it into kind of a horror anthology, a series of horrors where the great old ones were mentioned, but they were also they had their traditions in Norse mythology and a lot of the mythologies of ancient Europe and from around the world.
Some of it even Mid-East, because like Dagon is
See, I should have given you time to prep.
Yeah.
But the
because that's what okay, if you reference the Bible for the story of Samson after they capture him, it's a temple to Dagon that he's in.
And so the idea is, and I heard this mentioned and I want to reach out to these guys and see if they'd be interested in doing a podcast with us. They've been making the rounds. Who knows? We'll give them a shout and see what they say. But the Appalachian Intelligence podcast, I don't know if y'all have heard about them.
I've not.
I think these old boys are from West Virginia, and or maybe they're from Kentucky. I don't know, but they're from somewhere around. They talk like us mostly. They sound more like maybe from Kentucky or West Virginia, but
they're in this neck of the Appalachia.
That's right. But they brought the idea up on. They had the idea basically that the Nephilim were actually imprisoned underneath the Appalachian Mountains. And they go, if you want to watch their Tinfoil Hat episode, they did an episode of Tinfoil Hat with Sam Tripoli where they get into, expounding this theory in detail and why they think this way. But it kind of lined up with a lot of what I was thinking. And then actually on Tinfoil Hat, the episode after that, I didn't catch the guy's name, but he put together another piece of what I was thinking, and that was that what if all these instances of high strangeness all over the country, from Bigfoot to aliens to goblins to Little Green Men, Skinwalker Ranch, Hellier, Kentucky, the Pennyroyal, all these wild places that these just unexplainable things.
What's the one in Pennsylvania? It's like the weird pig that cries.
Yeah, Dalton, tell us about it. I think you mentioned it once on one of the shows in the chat. If you're out there, Dalton, let us know about that weird pig that cries.
It's just like that's what he is. He's really ugly and he cries about it. Kind of hilarious.
It kind of is. But one of the things that they mentioned in the Pennyroyal podcast that I never could find anything to back up, but they asserted it with certainty that area where the Pennyroyal Plateau, or they're known as the Pennyroyal, and that area there near Hellier, Kentucky, and what was the other? Shit, I can't think of the other name of the town. But if you look up Pennyroyal, you'll find it. But either way, these towns right here in Kentucky, they're supposedly underneath them is the largest amount of quartz crystal in the whole world. The largest deposit is underneath them. So, with being as quartz acts as a transmitter,
natural energy transmitter that it is.
Yeah, they say, well, maybe this is the reason we see a lot of these events that we classify as high strangeness. And I And when putting these ideas together,
And when people want to call that bullshit, it's like, what do you think like a quartz watch?
Mm-hmm.
It has an actual piece of quartz in it that actually keeps the electric pulses in check to keep the time. So
and that's right. And don't our all our radios and anything like that, don't they use a quartz emitter, or the older ones anyway? I don't know about the newer ones, but either way, it's
quartz is also a good conductor of heat too.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of different ways that the quartz could play a part. Now, like I said, I Googled probably because I was really interested in this to find out, where exactly all this quartz was. Was there mining there? Was there, was this the crystal caverns that we talk about? But we do know there's the largest cave network in the world underneath Mammoth Cave up in Kentucky. That's the largest known cave network in the world, and it's connected to a lot of other cave networks in the Appalachians.
If you've not caught it, we have a whole episode on it.
That's right.
I don't know which one.
I don't either, but I bet if you search it, you can find it in our episodes. But you should really be watching all our back catalog anyway, shouldn't you? I mean, let's be real. Just use it for some ASMR.
Days to burn.
That's right.
There's 100 episodes worth of burning.
That's right. You can throw it on when you're sleeping. You can throw it on when you're working out. You don't have to pay that much attention, but when something grabs your attention, then you listen up and listen in. You know how you do. That's how I do with my podcasts. I'll listen to a lot of them at work. If I'm doing a lot of stuff where I'm not talking to people, I'll put the podcast on in the ear and do that while I'm working, and it's pretty cool. But let's see here. Wanted to pull up a couple of stories because I found some interesting stuff.
Kind of fun. It's not related, but is related in a way. Just music. Have you listened to the new Tesseract album?
I have not.
Because where their name's a tesseract, it's that 4-dimensional cube, so it kind of plays into greater things like that. So it's pretty good.
A tesseract. That's an interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting name for a band. Mm-hmm. What's all this? I saw called a tesseract on it was a woodworking company. I was on my way back from like Irwin or something. Greenville, and there was a tesseract on like a mom and pop woodworking truck.
And also, with the statement that there are old gods buried beneath Appalachia and stuff, that also could play into, isn't there supposed to be like some sort of entity or something under the Euphrates River? That's why they're always like, where it's been drying up really bad lately. That they're like, it's going to let out.
What if the Watauga? What if the PVA was what if that was the plan to flood the valleys to hold them beneath?
Like weird eldritch being or some sort of weird kaiju, and that's what they have to lull it into sleep. They have it buried underneath.
Let's see the sixth trumpet, the angel at the Euphrates. Is this it?
Yeah.
I say this is from Getty EDU, Getty Museum. I'm kind of hesitant to show a Getty piece on here because I'm afraid they'll. Okay, well let's look at here. Let's read it before we show it, and I'll show it on the screen for just briefly because Getty, is really picky about their copyrights, and I don't really blame them. If I had spent the resources, I've heard really bad things about Getty and the Getty family and J. Paul Getty, and I don't know if any of them are true, but they are big out there in Hollywood, which makes it kind of seem likely that there's probably something to it, considering they were at all the Hollywood parties and all the, they were the ones getting the pictures of like the satanic rituals and stuff, and those leaked out.
Red Shoe Club or whatever.
Yeah, they probably are the ones that took the picture of the Red Shoe Club. To be honest, they're
imaging.
Oh, this one's public domain, so we can use this one. But let's read this real quick. It's pretty interesting here. As the sixth trumpet sounds in the apocalypse, St. John, seen in the right margin, hears a voice from the golden altar. The illuminator identified the voice as the Lord's by including the bottom of the mandalora with the Lord's feet resting on an orb. The voice tells the angel with the trumpet to release 4 angels who had been bound in the river Euphrates. In the miniature, these 4 avenging angels rise from the river with their weapons, ready to fulfill their mission of killing a third of the people on the earth.
Yeah, that's kind of why everyone was freaking out, where like last year and recently the Euphrates has been stupidly low, and there's been like stuff they found under it, like ruins of some sort.
I need to fix this because this is going to show us in the bottom corner, and I need to make us smaller.
Yeah, bottom.
So that people can see this. So, because we're taking up too much real estate on the screen. I know y'all want to see us, but we want you to be able to see the pictures. So let me see here. So, bear with me for just a second. I can see for miles and miles. There we go. Now let's try it again. This really is a cool picture, though. And then there's the angel sound. He's releasing the angels from beneath the Euphrates to kill a third of the people on the earth.
Maybe that's what the globalists want.
I mean, maybe I think they'd like more than that, but they really don't have to kill that many people. They just have to make that many people not reproduce. So, that could be also. I think that's definitely part of the plan. This is part of Getty Apocalypse, unknown commentary by Bergendalis. Wow. How about this? I am going to save this. This is crazy. Unknown artist maker from 1255 to 1260. And Getty's putting this up for free. So that's pretty awesome. We've got more from it here. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be saving this and checking it out a little bit later. Oh, wow. Nobody knows who made this book. Wow, I'm definitely saving that. But yeah, so is that part of what you were hearing about the entity, beneath the Euphrates? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's not a new concept, the idea that you could hide someone beneath a river, beneath the mountain, beneath the god, or beneath imprison a angelic entity in this case.
Which, it makes sense with the Appalachians, considering they're one of the oldest structures on this planet.
Yep, I think they are the oldest mountain range. And didn't you tell me that they go on into Europe?
Mm-hmm. It's actually like Iceland, Greenland. It goes all the way up through there, through the UK, and it's actually the mountains that are in Norway along the coast.
We'll pull it up here. It's a mountain range in North America, but...
Well, the Appalachia, the name for it, but the mountain range that it's...
Here we go. That shows it going up through Maine. That's not the whole thing. Let's look it up a little bit. Let's look up the Appalachians. Go to what, Scandinavia?
Yeah. Because it goes up in through Norway, and I forget the name of the mountains. And also, the mountains that are in Scotland are the same mountain range.
The Cholen, KJOLEN, are in Norway and Sweden. Oops. Let's look it up real quick. Let's pull up a picture. I'm trying to find this because I've heard this before, but I've never actually looked it up to see.
If you look at it when everything's together, say like where they're in Norway, it all goes up through that area.
Okay, but that still doesn't show them connected to the Appalachians. Let's find one where it shows them connected, where you can actually see it's all one range.
There is.
Reckon if we looked on Google Earth, we could find it.
I remember seeing something on there that showed it showed like the whole thing where it was highlighted to where you could see all the mountain ranges, and back when for the Earth, whenever it was all.
Let's pull it up on Google Earth real quick. But
together.
One of the boys on the Appalachian Intelligence podcast, they mentioned like I did in probably 2 episodes ago, talking about the Tower of Babel. Mm-hmm. And he also he didn't think that it was a tower to the heavens. I think one of the guys thought it was a tower to escape the flood. It was being built by Nimrod, who Nimrod was a descendant of one of the Watchers, so I guess he was a descendant of one of the Nephilim. I don't know if he was one of the Nephilim himself or if he was a offspring of a Nephilim, but he was a great king and a great hunter. And it's funny, you kind of, the Nimrod a lot of people started using it as an insult to somebody because they didn't really understand it was in a Bugs Bunny cartoon, or it was Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd, and Bugs was being sarcastic and calling Elmer Fudd Nimrod because Nimrod was the great hunter, and but Elmer Fudd was a terrible hunter. So, but a lot of people didn't get the reference, and they just thought Nimrod meant a dumbass, So
most of the Looney Tunes people misinterpret, but
yeah, there's the Nimrod was actually a descendant of either a Nephilim or a descendant of the Nephilim, and the Nephilim, I believe, were I think the great old ones were probably the Watchers or a version of the Watchers. Maybe they weren't the Watchers themselves. Maybe they were the spiritual opposites of the Watchers. Maybe they were even the creators of the Watchers. It's hard to really say because we had so many entities. The Gnostics called them the demiurges. Some people called them the archons, but they were basically impersonating gods. So I think that's one of the things that the Gnostics believe is that Jehovah, Yahweh, what's another word? El Shaddai. All these different Elohim, yeah. All these different names that God uses in the Bible, that these are different entities that are actually impersonating God. They're not actually the creator of the universe. They were wanting the human beings to think that they're the creator.
You go to some of those apocryphatic books, like the actual, like the Book of Judas, like Jesus, he's like, you don't worship the same. It's like your God is not the same one as mine. So like the old Abrahamic God is not the same one that Jesus is supposed to be.
Yeah. No, and I could see that because God totally, we've mentioned it on the show before, he has a total change in character.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's really an asshole back then.
He really is.
It's like he wants to be worshipped all the time. You need to kill things to appease him. If you don't, he gets a hissy fit and kills people.
Well, like Cain and Abel, man. Like I never understood the whole thing about Cain and Abel. I mean, maybe Cain was a worse guy, but it seems like, okay, if Abel was a hunter and a rancher, is what it sounds like, and Cain was a farmer and grew vegetables and stuff. Why was God less pleased with the vegetables and stuff? Was it because it was vegetables and he wanted blood, or was it because Cain just didn't mean his sacrifice? I never understood. I always heard both stories growing up, but either way, it's like God demands your total fealty, and it's not just a few cases where people are just burned alive or punished.
Hell, it's like the one thing he was that prayed to God and he sent that angry female bear to kill everyone. That's I can't remember all the thing.
There was the one where the kids were making fun of the bald man.
Yeah, that's it.
And
he tells God, and he sends a she bear in to kill all of them.
Yeah, for making fun of the bald man.
It's like what?
Yeah, that's
talk about boomers being angry about things. I mean.
I guarantee you that bald man would have carried a 1911, 2 world wars. But I don't see on here where the mountains are going. I'll just tell you, man, I'm not seeing it on here.
Knowing it all.
How do you?
Stuff where it goes together, because
it just don't look like the same. I've heard it is, but you see, there's the continental shelf there. And it goes around, I guess if you count it going all the way around and you count the part that goes underwater.
And the part, because it goes into Greenland, it goes into Iceland, and then it gets up into...
I guess if you think that we're just like, the Appalachians are just the top of the larger range that goes all the way down here. Yeah, I can see that, I guess.
I think they said that's even like the same rock type of formations in like that whole area before the Earth started shifting apart. All the...
Well, I guess I can see it, but by that reasoning, then, Japan is the same as Alaska or California. You know what I mean? So is these ring, that's the Bering Strait, I'm guessing, right there, right?
I have no clue off the top of my head.
I think it would have to be.
Probably.
Yeah, it would have to be. That's the Bering Sea.
So I find that Alaska and Russia are separated by like 12 miles.
Just Alaska's tail, and right here they're even closer. Look at there. And you can actually, I've heard you can actually see part of Russia. You can see this little island right here from Alaska. Which, famously Sarah Palin, she actually didn't say, well, you can see Russia from my house. Like, she said, no, there's parts of Alaska that you can see Russia. And then Tina Fey went on Saturday Night Live and said, I can see Russia from my house, so I should be vice president. And then everybody thought Sarah Palin really said that. But that's a strange woman, though. I saw her just a couple of years ago. She posted like a bunch of American flag bikini pics and like attention whore, and she's kind of old for that girl. I mean, you look pretty good, but dang. We don't know what a governor Instagram model. But so anyway, the idea
Sounds like it's like if you did it like that Governor Babe. It sounds like a Dick Nukem character.
So if we look, let's look at it a little, pull out a little bit here, and we'll see how those all things connect to, what do you call it, to not only Europe, Scandinavia, but the Middle East, and that's where kind of our, civilization kind of comes from as far as we know. The birth of civilization was in North Africa, and
If you look, because we're UK, Ireland, where it's all, if you pinch it all together,
yeah.
it all goes. I mean,
Yeah, okay, so once the continents drifted apart,
they would be up in here because it goes to they would be this part of it.
I see. Yeah,
This part's down here, and then it goes into that's like we're close to Mermaid.
So basically, if we go back to Pangea, they would have been actually touching, but then they're still connected. But this is the space between them where they came apart.
It all drifted.
I see. But that's making more sense to me now. And there's even a
there is a map you can find on the internet somewhere that kind of has all of the stuff highlighted. That's everything that used to be connected together. The Appalachians were a part of.
Okay, I was looking for it. That's what I'm hoping to find, but I didn't come across anything like that. But so we got this. I mean, these whole deep areas within the ocean, and places like this is where. A lot of times where Lovecraft talked about the deep old ones reside, great old ones reside. And there was something of the deep, and then
And everything that he wrote was actually like in the New England area, so everyone talks like they're from Boston.
Mm-hmm. And but it was so they would have been in the Appalachian Mountains there, and so a lot of them would have been kind of the creations of the deep, but other ones are mentioned specifically to be under the mountains, and I don't remember the names of them all.
That's why Cthulhu stays in the ocean, because he's scared of what's under the Appalachians.
Yeah, you got Cthulhu and the Krakens. Yeah, I've seen that meme going around. And if you've seen I haven't seen it myself, the Old Gods of Appalachia. It seems like a pretty interesting podcast. It's based on
I've heard of it.
Cthulhu. I think there's like 27 episodes out of it. But anyway, the idea that these old gods are imprisoned within the mountain imprisoned underground goes back a long way. And we even see modern, I guess it's not modern now, it's probably 10, 15 years old now, but the Joss Whedon film, The Cabin in the Woods. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of these, and this, I promise I'm going somewhere with all this. I know this is a lot of kind of disparate topics coming together, but we're going to put them all together. So the Cabin in the Woods has the idea. I'll give you
Legos.
That's right.
Which I did. I bought a Lego set today.
Did you? What'd you get?
I didn't know that they had 30th anniversary Jurassic Park Lego sets, and I bought the. There was one that was Dennis Nedry and the Dilophosaurus.
Nice.
Because that is like, if you've never read the book, is like the most gruesome scene out of the whole.
Yeah, it
is the most gruesome scene.
Yeah.
It's how much in detail it makes in the film, that is a scary part of the film right there.
But in the book, it doesn't cut away.
It's like the book shadows it and like this horror and grotesqueness.
I don't know whether when the guy gets ripped apart by the baby Tyrannosaurus.
It
goes into. That's not even in. I mean, the baby Tyrannosaurus is not even in.
That character's
yeah, they combine the lawyer and
T-Rex. Yeah, well, the lawyer. Yeah, they kind of. Because Gennaro is actually like a badass. He was actually like a good guy.
Yeah, and they just made him get eaten.
He wasn't a sneaky lawyer
Yeah.
that gets eaten by the T-Rex like he was in the film.
Yeah. And it took me a long time to finally read that book. My sister-in-law, Renee, let me borrow it, and then I read about half of it, and then...
I had to audiobook it just because time.
Yeah.
But hell, audiobook, it's still 13 and a half hours.
Yeah. I put them on 1.75 or 2 speed if I can. Some authors or some readers I
The
can't take
original
it,
Jurassic Park, because it's done by the narration of the guy that did the narration over like the intercoms in the film. He's the one that did the narration to the book, the audio
That's
book,
cool.
which is a nice touch. And
I like my audio.
He does the kids' voices for Lex and Tim. He makes a little girl voice, and it's hilarious.
I like my audiobooks read by Bob Newfield. Have you ever heard anything about him?
I don't think so.
He talks like this, but then he tries to do the voices like this. And he's like, well, that was the last one I listened to. Don Quixote.
I did also do the audiobook for The Lost World.
Yeah.
And it was done by this British dude.
Now, the Arthur Conan Doyle or the Michael Crichton?
No, I cried.
Okay.
Yeah. It was actually done by I'm pretty sure he was actually he's a British guy, or there may have been 2 of them that did it. But he does he impersonates to make Malcolm sound like Jeff Goldblum. So I was like, okay, I can deal with this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had to picture Jeff Goldblum as Malcolm, and Malcolm. I don't want to give a spoiler away from the book, but they do the character very well based on I think the book, but as far as what he actually does, it's a total. He's a lot more hands-on than he is in the movie, I think.
Yeah, he looks a lot different too in the book.
Yeah.
Because he's actually not attractive and he's balding. he's not Jeff Goldblum.
All right. But anyway, let's get back to the Appalachian Mountains here. I'm glad you got your. Are you going to put your Lego set together, or you just going to keep it in the box?
Together.
Okay, cool. Good. I put mine together too.
I kind of want. They also have the visitor center.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend the money on it, but I was like, man. They also, even probably the next one I buy, it's the Triceratops scene, and it comes with the big pile of shit.
Nice.
It literally has the Lego big pile of shit that has the berries that was making the Triceratops sick.
Is Dr. Sadler's hand brown?
No, badly. But it comes with one of the explorers, and it comes with Malcolm, Sadler, and the Triceratops, and the big pile of shit.
Nice.
I saw that, and I was like, if I'm not dead set on this Dilophosaurus scene.
Do you actually have to build the pile of shit
Yes,
out of Legos?
it's multiple pieces.
Okay,
And you
nice.
can take it apart, and there's like the berries and the leaves that are making them sick.
Perfect.
I forgot what the plant was.
I forget too. But anyway,
I was like, that's the best thing ever.
me and B, we get each other Star Wars Legos for Christmas and birthdays a lot of times, and we like putting those together and setting them up on the shelf upstairs.
I don't have anywhere to put these yet, because I need to get rid of some old crap. But
Well, what's up, Dalton? We were talking about you earlier, brother. I hope you heard it. What's the name of that sad pig that cries up in
the pig
Pennsylvania?
grifted.
Yeah. We figured you would know the answer to it. We're talking about the old gods of Appalachia here. Well, not the old gods of Appalachia. That's the podcast. We're talking about the great old ones and whether they may be imprisoned within Appalachia. And so that to round it all up here, the guys on the Appalachian Intelligence podcast, they posited the idea that perhaps these are actually Nephilim, these great old ones, and that they, as I kind of alluded to earlier, one of the fellas on there said that he believed that that Nimrod wasn't actually building the Tower of Babel to heaven, but he was building it something else. And then, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was on the Tinfoil Hat podcast after that, and he said something similar to what I did, and that he was not actually, there wasn't a physical structure. And that's what I think. I don't think it was a physical structure. I think the Tower of Babel was something that, a technological device that was basically built by the human beings who were trying to understand the nature of God. And I think maybe they called forth these great old ones who were actually the forces of nature that they were trying to control, and they basically unleashed them on the earth. And
Godzilla.
Yeah. Godzilla, he could be a great old one. But Cthulhu, he was basically the great old one within the sea, and he controlled the armies of the sea, the Kraken and all that shit. And but it's kind of like a Poseidon or a Neptune,
Except a lot more malicious.
That's what I was going. Well, Poseidon and Neptune were pretty damn malicious too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a lot more. What would you say? Macabre than Poseidon.
Well, I mean, if you look at if you go with all the H.P. Lovecraft, it's where the term the cosmic horror. It's like the unknowing. They don't really. They're not describable, really.
Yeah.
Like they're unknown, unfathomable.
Well, and Stephen King got into his Dark Tower series, and really all his series, his works, because they all kind of tied into this. But there was a recurring theme of something they called the Todash spaces, or the worlds between worlds, the spaces between spaces, where the great old ones lurked within the depths, and it wasn't.
Langoliers went to.
Yeah, it probably was. Yeah, the spaces between spaces. The Langoliers were pretty much minions of the keepers of the Todash space, and it was very similar to the backrooms concept that you see, and that's also reminded me of Twin Peaks, especially season 3, where if you haven't seen Twin Peaks season 3, if you like the kind of stuff we're talking about and you haven't seen Twin Peaks season 3, you really need to watch it. But unfortunately,
than we are.
Yeah. Unfortunately, if you do want to watch season 3 of Twin Peaks to really get the best enjoyment of it, you're going to have to go watch season 1 and season 2. So you're going to have to invest a lot of your life into this if it's something you want to get into. But I found it quite enjoyable and very thought provoking. And there are I think there's 3 seasons of Twin Peaks. The first one's like 10 episodes. The second one's like I don't know. The first one I think maybe 13, and then the second one's probably 10, 12, 13, and then the third one's probably 18, 20. So you're looking at 60 hours to watch this whole series. And unfortunately, you're probably going to have to watch it more than once to really pick up on all of it. Because I've seen it a couple times over the years. I've not
seen all of it either. So
I've seen season 1 and 2 twice over, actually I saw it when I was a kid. My parents watched it, and I was just fascinated because it was so much different. It's so different from anything else on TV at the time. And then, then I watched it again probably 15 years ago when you first started being able to find, torrents and streaming stuff where you could actually watch stuff online. I watched it again then, and then, they took it off all that stuff and got it, protected. But then I watched it again probably about 5 years ago. But if you haven't seen it, I watched it again just in time for season 3. I watched season 3 once, and I'm gonna have to buy it, unfortunately. But anyway, Dalton, what's the name of that pig that cries? But the idea that the great old ones are imprisoned within under Appalachia, it led me to think of The Cabin Beneath the Woods, and I started to explain the premise of this, and I stopped. But The Cabin Beneath the Woods,
in the woods,
actually, yeah, Cabin in the Woods. I think you guys where you interjected the Jurassic Park song. Yeah. So we'll get back there. So I'm glad I got back to that. No, it's all right. I welcome your interjections, obviously, but just try to find my way back. It's kind of like when you're walking in the woods, especially here in Appalachia.
When you drop that one Lego piece and it goes under the bed somewhere, and you're like.
Yep, and then when you find it, who knows what else you might find down there. And when you walk down this path, when you come across this old stone staircase in the woods that by any rights ought not to be there.
Don't go to it. We have an episode on that too.
That's right. But you can't help it but being curious and walking down there, and you can't help it going down that rabbit hole. And that's what we do sometimes. But we're going to climb back out of the rabbit hole, and we're going to get back up to the cabin in the woods where I was explaining the premise behind this. It starts off very similar to like The Evil Dead or something like this. Take a trip to a cabin in the woods, a group of teenagers going off to have some fun. Hailing in the woods, party in the woods. There's some backstory where some baggage needs to be dealt with, and blah 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 blah. People start getting murdered, but then it comes out they're being murdered by fantastical creatures who we all thought were myths, right? There's like some of the things on there remind me of some of the creatures in like 13 Ghosts, and then there was like. Your thing that was supposed to be like Pennywise the clown, basically, and that was there was all different kinds of monsters and creatures that were coming after all these kids, and you go on into the movie and you find out later that there's actually a large ritual being performed, and it has to be performed all around the world, and there are multiple centers that are working together to perform these rituals, and this one is run by like an operation. The United States government is running one operation, but they also have counterparts in Japan and Russia. All around the world, people are doing these things. What they're doing is they're leading these kids, these young people, into this trap, because it turns out all these horror movies, and this is the premise of the film, that all these horror movies that you see are actually real. They are real people being recorded, being put in these scenarios because they have to be sacrificed to keep the old gods from waking up. And in the premise of the film, The Cabin in the Woods, each of these centers, and our story centers around a cabin in what appears to be Appalachia. I don't remember.
I don't remember where it was. I've only seen the film like once all the way through. So,
but this one is in America, and it looks like Appalachia, and one by one we're seeing that all the characters in these different centers all around the world are succeeding in thwarting the evil monsters and killing them, rather than the ritual being completed where all the friends of the final girl are killed one by one, and then the final girl is sacrificed to put the old ones, the great old ones, to sleep. And sometimes the final girl gets away, other times she doesn't, but somewhere in the world they always get the final girl and sacrifice her, and that satisfies these old gods and they stay asleep. But the thing that I thought was that the old gods beneath the mountains. I mean, that was the obvious point. But I mentioned Pennywise and Stephen King. If you remember, Pennywise appeared most often as a clown in the movie, but he also appeared as a lot of other things in the whole premise. And I'm not sure how well
realistically it was a female when it's in its.
Well, yes, it was.
Form.
Yeah, well, it looked like a spider, and it did. I don't remember if it laid eggs or not. But in the films, they showed it, but I don't know really that they explained it like they did in the book. Mm-hmm. But in the book, it would actually take upon the form of whatever you were the most afraid of. So the boy. I don't remember what is the black kid in the movie. He was in the book. His name was Mike, but he had seen the movie. He had seen the movie Rodan with the giant giant atomic bird in Japan, and it freaked him out. So whenever Pennywise came at him, there was a giant crow that was attacking him, and trying to peck his eyes out. And the same thing with like the boy Stan. If you remember, he was the Jewish kid. He went in the old standpipe where all these boys had drowned, and it always freaked him out hearing that story about how all these boys, how somebody had, you better stay away from them, you could fall in there and drown. So he had this nightmare of these boys coming out of there, that all the boys that had drowned in it over the years, and they came after him. And then one of the characters, Eddie, Richie, he had a nightmare. Basically of a leper touching him and his skin falling off. So when he saw Pennywise the clown, it was a leper who was, his nose was falling off. Same with another character, Richie, or Eddie. Eddie was the one who was, he was so scared of germs, so he was afraid the leper would touch him and get him infected. And Richie was, he was afraid of the werewolf, so that's what he saw. But basically, their mind. It was able to transmit their worst fears to it. And so I know that this is convoluted, but I'm almost there. So we get to the idea of high strangeness. We've got aliens. We've got Bigfoots. We've got elves, fairies.
And I've also heard a theory that...
I think chupacabra is a real animal, but...
Yeah, probably think so too. That, there's basically the same, it's almost like the same species of what Pennywise is. Mary Poppins is the same thing.
Interesting. I've never heard that theory.
I watched this big, I don't remember exactly what the name of it was, but I watched this like 15-20 minute video where they kind of laid it out, and you're like, they're the same thing, except Mary Poppins is a little more benevolent of a version.
I'll have to watch that. That's interesting to me, because I watched this fan theory on Home Alone and Jigsaw. Did you see that one? Okay, it makes the case to me totally 100% convincingly that the creators of the Saw movies, at least the first two, had the concept that what if Kevin McAllister, from the trauma of being left home alone and dealing with these burglars on his own, grew up into a sadistic person who would basically try to judge people and punish people. And if you watch the movie, watch a video on YouTube, or is Home Alone a sequel, or is Saw a sequel to Home Alone, or it's something like that. But I swear, man, he makes the case very convincingly.
He does, if you think of it. Like you said, the first two especially.
Just wait till you see the details in it. And I actually liked the first two Saws. I didn't care for the other ones after that. But
about past the third one, it was really like, okay.
Yeah, it was pretty redundant after that.
Kind of like, branching off into more shit, like Fast and Furious. Like the first three are okay, and then after that, no.
Yeah. Well, I liked the it's kind of like, well, damn, now I can't think of what it was. I had another movie that it reminded me of, that it was like, the first one is really good, the second one is all right, but after that they just keep going. But I can't think of what it was. It was another horror movie, but I did like the Scary Movie with Dr. Phil and Shaq making fun of the scene in Saw. Did you see that where Dr. Phil and Shaq are they wake and find themselves imprisoned and chained to the wall, and Dr. Phil manages to get the hacksaw to Shaq, but then Shaq cuts off the wrong leg. He doesn't cut off his leg that's chained. Or no, I can't remember. Uncle Phil maybe, Dr. Phil maybe cuts off the wrong leg, but one of them cuts off the wrong leg, and it's hilarious. But so back to the idea that, the Cabin in the Woods, they have these different monsters coming after the people. That are horror movie tropes, that they're basically all these people who are in these horror movies are put there and kept there. That's why they can't escape. It always seems like there's some reason they can't get out of the area that they're in, whether the car doesn't work, they lose the keys, the bridge goes out. There's always something that happens to save them there. And in the book, it's because, or in the movie, the Cabin in the Woods, it's because the government is, or some deep state operations group within the government is making sure that you can't get out because the ritual has to be performed. And the way this monster comes to them in, whatever way haunts their dreams the most.
What monster? I mean, I don't want
go ahead.
Play out too much more, but they choose what they're like. They're kind of, they kind of have fun with it too. It seems like they choose what way they're wanting to. Yeah. Basically kill the.
Oh, that's right, they do. Yeah, that's right, they do. So it's maybe not the same, but the idea that it can manifest in different ways, and then Pennywise manifests in the way that most scares you. Okay, so where I'm getting to is, what's up the highway, man? He's cracking up here. The idea is these different monsters, these different cryptids that we see, whether it be leprechauns, fairies, elves, Bigfoot, aliens, Jesus. No, I don't know. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm sure.
But different angels, not Jesus necessarily, because Jesus would be a supreme being. He'd be totally different and distinguishable. But these different beings that we see are kind of the same energetic constructs appearing to us in different ways.
What if it's the Mormon Jesus?
That could be.
Because he's
an Indian, isn't he? Or is he? I don't remember.
Well, Mormons are odd.
Well, they said that Jesus came to the U.S. and actually interacted with the Indian tribes, and I think they maybe even said that the Indians were the lost tribe of Judah. But yeah, I think that jibes with everything, man, because they're
base Jesus.
Well, you get down to, like I said, all these different things. The Kentucky Hobgoblins, for one. That'd be a good one. We've talked about that on the show. That's an event of high strangeness. These things that appeared in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and this was 1947, the same time as Roswell, the same time as flying saucers out in Washington State, same time as all these different UFO events started happening, right? About 1947, right after, a year and a half after the atomic bombs, 2 years after the first atomic bomb test. A lot of people say the aliens were coming to check up on us after that. But the idea that all these different expressions of energy that we're seeing as things that we don't understand, whether, like I said, maybe you're an alien, maybe you're an atheist, you get abducted by a space alien, maybe you're a pagan, a fairy takes you into a fairy circle, Maybe you're I mean, a Wiccan. Maybe a fairy takes you into a fairy circle. Maybe you're a pagan. Pan takes you into his circle. You know, maybe you're connected to some of the stories of like the Wendigo, and you know you're abducted by the Wendigo. It's all really the same energy. Maybe there's
Or Skinwalker you get abducted by.
well, maybe there's good and bad energies that could manifest themselves. Maybe the good energy, you know, the energy of the Jesus maybe manifests itself as one way, and you might see it as Jesus, you might see it as Buddha, you might see it as you know, an angelic form, the Archangel Michael, or something like that. And then there's the opposite of that, which is the evil energy, the dark energy, and you might see that as
You have the Mary Poppins energy and the Pennywise energy.
right.
The same,
Yeah, they
the
could,
same species of being.
and I think that's kind of the same thing, except I think that I don't know. Do you think that Jesus is the same species as Satan, and they're just polar opposites of one another? Because that's pretty much what the Masons and these ancient mystery religions believe is, you know, they're just representations of the human psyche. For one, that's like the second level. For one is the mythological level. Second level is their representations of the human psyche, and then third is they believe that there actually is, you know, a metaphysical reality to this, where there's a positive energy and a negative energy that are facing off with one another. So are these positive energies just coming forth in different ways? Is that how we get to things like David Icke saying that, well, okay, we're all just energy, we're all reacting with energy? Everything I see, we just talked about this the other day, or a couple weeks ago, but and when I look at Dustin, I'm not actually seeing the physical form that is Dustin. I'm seeing the energetic particles that are vibrating and
reflecting off of me.
yeah, and I'm seeing the light bounce off of the energy that makes him up. I'm not seeing the energy. I'm seeing the light bouncing off of him. And even I'm not seeing the light bouncing off of him exactly. I'm a physical form of him. I'm seeing the energetic form of him that is vibrating slow enough for that light to be able to actually bounce off of it, and me to perceive it with my eyes and calculate it with my brain.
Because what about things like cats? They can see in different wavelengths. That's why they always like stare at things in the room that you're like,
Oh, is that right?
yeah.
Okay.
They can see at different wavelengths.
Well, see, now they've done research recently that shows that they believe birds can actually physically see the same way we can see. They basically have a heads-up display, and that's how they see radio waves. And that they use radio waves to navigate, and they now actually believe that they can see these things. And I've seen
Which makes sense, because like even foxes, like if a fox can align its target polar north, it has like a 90-some% chance of like catching its prey.
Oh yeah,
because it can line up with that polar north, and it hones it into it.
Well, I'll tell you, I definitely, years ago, I thought there has to be something to the idea that the birds, and this was, when they weren't really sure, but they were speculating that it was radio waves that they communicated with. And I said, there has to be something to this idea, because I was outside one day, and I lived down in Lynn Valley at the time, and they had just put up a new cell phone tower.
They hear on a different hertz level than we do, like their brains refresh differently.
Birds.
So, yeah. So basically, like, you know how we hear them, they're really high pitched and like it sounds pretty and happy. But basically, I think I saw a video of like how people, like how what we would perceive how animals are hearing. And basically they still sound like what we think dinosaurs would sound like to birds. Yeah. It's actually really creepy.
I saw somebody meme the other day, like, somebody had to come up with the idea of what dinosaurs sound like, and we all just agreed that that's what dinosaurs sound like. It's like before they even had really the kind of data that they even have now, which is still pretty scant, even though you can tell they were probably feathered and they've seen some skins, and
even though I think the sounds that they actually make now are creepier than like you would say, like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park, that's an iconic noise, but it's like, it's almost creepier what you think the T-Rex, what they think it would sound like now. Because it's more of like,
similar to a bird, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's more of like that bellow. It'd be more like, that growl that a crocodile can do.
Yeah. Yep.
It'd be more like that, except you can hear it from like a mile away, just like hitting you in the chest if it's close
Yeah,
to you.
yeah. No, they think they might have hunted using that too.
And the fact that it had the best vision of any animal on this planet.
Yeah. It wasn't like Jurassic Park where it can't see if you hold still. I'm pretty sure, or they are
Which,
pretty
you know,
sure.
in the Lost World, they counteracted that, and they were like, "Yeah, I can see you," because the one dude, they thought that was how it was, but it wasn't, and the one dude gets eaten when they're in the T-Rex nest.
I've never read The Lost World.
But basically, I think they said that it was for Rexy, but I don't. It's like, it's almost like, did she not? I think she just didn't know what really humans were.
Yeah.
And she already ate, so she was like, I'm not, I'm not hunting for food. I'm kind of curious about what this is, so she's more
She's
playing
smelling
with
it and like, and Grant's just standing there like, she can't see me if I don't move. Yeah. Oh, that's Dustin. It's been a wild and wonderful ride to here. That's right.
Yeah, I was going to the congrats on the 100th.
Right on, right on. We're so glad you've had you all with us. We really appreciate you. And if you're still with us, be sure and go back and like that video if you haven't already. That really does help us help other people see it. The more the people like it, the more people see it. If you want to get you one of these here stickers, see, we got them just like the banner there. You can stick that on your car. Support the Iron Mountain Hour. Maybe somebody asks you what it is. Nobody's ever asked me what it is, but I thought somebody might. I guess I should have put it on YouTube on there. But our buddy Wilbur made us those. He's going to be coming on the channel real soon. He's got to do another preview for or promo for his Vodka Moon product. We're going to have him come on and tell us about that, and hopefully he'll bring us some again. And
hopefully this time not get as sloshed.
Yeah. We're a sucker for free booze here on the show, so if you want to come on and bring us free booze, you're always welcome. But maybe not everybody. But I had one fella out here. We had a party one night, and there was a guy who showed up drunk to the party. And this was probably like 7, 8 o'clock at night. And this, I was probably 32, 33 years old at the time, so it's not like we're, 21-year-old, like, let's party, this was a bunch of like musicians and people just hanging out, drinking, smoking. It was really chill, nothing. It wasn't going to be anything wild. And I used to do this every year. I used to have a party with probably 30, 40 musicians, and we'd come and hang out and drink and play music. And the last one I had, I can't remember what year it was, probably 2015. It ended up or maybe it was 2014. It ended up in a disaster with me, wrestling a liquor bottle away from one of my bandmates while he was trying to beat somebody over the head with it. And it was funny because the police actually drove by, just driving through the neighborhood checking it out. We're 32, 33 years old at the time, so it's not like we're teenagers. And people at this party just ran out of the house. The cops are here! The cops are here! I walked out to the road. I was talking to the cops, and I was kind of embarrassed, I guess. I was like, I'm sorry, man. I was like, what? You need anything? And he's like, nope. Just went around the cul-de-sac and got out of here. But I don't know how we got into that exactly, but anyway, the idea of the old gods being in an Appalachian, we've gone back to it all night, but that's pretty much what I wanted to sum it up as. Is this is the I think it's maybe the primordial spiritual energy that the opposing forces of dark and light that fight for control over our spirit, our soul, whatever it is, our whatever it is within us that animates us, that makes us different, that gives us free will, that gives us inspiration, that makes us creative, that makes us be even if the stories of God and creation aren't real, we fucking imagine. If it's not real, we fucking imagine that shit, which is even more amazing than if it is real, I think.
And the fact that these mountain ranges were formed before life had bones.
Yeah.
When things were still invertebrate living in the ocean.
That's right.
These mountains were here.
That's
so
right.
it makes sense to like there's some weird
And maybe not all the
power to it.
Yeah, and maybe not all the, the spiritual entities that were capable of becoming embodied were embodied in the sense that we're used to, where you're in a mammalian body or corporeal form. Yeah, perhaps they are even a animation of part of the earth. Maybe it's even like the tectonic plates themselves. Maybe they are conscious. Maybe even the planet itself and stars and suns. Maybe even they're conscious or formed of multiple conscious beings. There's really no way for us to know because, like I said, whatever animates us is invisible to us.
On a greater macro scale, like the bacteria that lives on your skin doesn't know your consciousness,
right?
Even though you know a bit.
Yeah, and it could be conscious too that you're just not aware of. We'd have no way of knowing. And maybe that all these different consciousness manifest themselves in different way, and we perceive them in different ways. So, it's hard to really. It's hard for anybody to know, but we have to ask the questions. So that's what makes us. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us. That was what we think makes us separate from everything else. Maybe those amoeba are questioning things like this on their own level. Maybe it's like well, it's been done a bunch of times, but the most recent thing that I saw was like Rick and Morty, where it's like they're and you can take this of the Nephilim too. Rick and Morty go to a world that Rick has basically parallel universe where he's created on the microscopic level, where he's invented a generator for these creatures to use, and it powers their planet, and he steals just a little bit of their energy in order to power his car, and he has all these different civilizations that he's doing this to, and so it's like, I'm just stealing a little bit of their energy that they're working hard for, so is it really that bad because I gave them the device that they use to collect it, and it powers their society, but I am still in their life force, and that that goes right back to these energies. Like, why do they want the good and the bad energy want us to join them? Why is that? What's the ultimate goal here? Is it is there endless creation? Is there endless destruction? Do they bounce back and forth? What do you think?
Are they just hungry?
That's right.
Are they like in the Transformers universe? Are they like a Unicron or something where they just consume?
So give us your thoughts in the chats or the comments. Yeah.
Or a Galactus kind of deal.
Give us your thoughts in the chats or the comments. What do you think about all this nonsense? Is it nonsense? Are we onto something? Is it? Is
there something tangible we've said tonight?
Yeah. Or are we just? But my brain is making these connections, and obviously it could just be, storytelling, and you read a good story and you're like, oh, that makes sense. Even something like Harry Potter or the Lord of the Rings that well, they say the Lord of the Rings was true. Actually, there's the story that Tolkien was actually writing an ancient history that he came across when he studied, because he had access to the libraries of Oxford that nobody else had access for, and he supposedly came across an actual history of Europe, and that's what the Lord of the Rings is, but it's kind of written in a lot of metaphors. But that's neither here nor there. When we come up with these stories, like, I could make a story up out of my mind right now, but there's a good chance if I make up a story, I'm going to use, I'm going to make some version up of a story that's been told already. Because there's only so many stories. Like, if you get right down to it, you look at Hollywood movies, there's only a handful of stories that they retell with different characters, different settings, and, slightly differently.
Until they go into what they're doing now and they make it the same story but make it worse.
Yeah, that too. But there's the classic story. Like, how many movies are based on The Man Who Would Be King? Like, you take, I'll give you the best examples of it. You watch The Man Who Would Be King. It's the Sean Connery and Michael Caine movie. Excellent movie. About two guys who are Freemasons. They hook up on a train to Bhutan or some damn where, and they say they get up in the mountains and they are wearing their Freemasons medallions, and the people up there in this, I think it's Pakistan, or no, it's somewhere. I think it's a made up country, but it's over near Pakistan, Afghanistan, and they come across an ancient carving of a Freemasonic G with the square and compass, and these guys are wearing that, so the people think they're gods, and they become the king, and they basically he comes to Sean Connery's character comes to be the ruler of this place, and then he has his whole rise and fall, and kind of the hero's journey. Which is, where I guess where that comes from. But if you look at a sports movie, look at any sports movie, a sports comedy, from Major League to the Mighty Ducks to Talladega Nights. I don't know about basketball. It might fall that one too. I don't know, but being as Matt and Trey are theater nerds, I'd say it probably does. But you look at Major League. What's the Necessary Roughness? Will Ferrell's basketball movie, Tropic Thunder. Talladega Nights, the Ballad of not even Will Ferrell, but Ballad of Dewey Cox. They're all the exact same story, except for they're just different settings and different characters going through the same things. You have your rise to stardom, your fall from grace, and then your path to redemption. And you see these things over and over again. And then there's like a couple of there's another one, the Tragic Romance. How many versions of the tragic romance of Tristan and Isolde, of Romeo and Juliet are there? There's tons and tons of them. And basically you have so many story archetypes, and there's probably about 20 story archetypes, and basically every story that you can think of is going to follow one of those if it's a good story. Otherwise, it'll just be
the Romeo and Juliet archetype. They're like, I want my Romeo. It's like, so you want like a 3-day weekend love affair that you all end up killing yourselves over?
Yeah, and that it's bad, but you go ahead and do it anyway just because you can't fight your carnal nature and well, I don't know. I guess they thought they were in love, but youthful love and youthful splendor, and it is a tragedy too. That's the thing a lot of people forget about is it actually is supposed to be a tragedy. It's supposed to be. I mean, it's not supposed to be. Yeah, it's not romantic. It has its romantic moments, but I don't know. I think it's more than that. I think the people who want their Romeo and Juliet romance just really don't know what they're talking about for the most part, and they just want the idea of Romeo standing out and reading, saying romantic things to them while they're on a balcony in the moonlight, really West Side Story, that's a different version of it's the same story. Mm-hmm. But how many times can you tell the same story? A lot, apparently. But it makes me wonder, are these gods that we come up with, do they come from the same place that these stories come from? And we just kind of come up with the same ones who have the same nature, because you go back all the way to ancient Greece, ancient Rome, ancient Mesopotamia, and Sumeria, all these, and even India, and the ancient Far East. All these gods have very similar characteristics. They have very similar descriptions. So, is it just our way of describing the natural universe, and we all kind of, what is it about it that causes us to come up with the same ideas? Is it innate, inherent in humans that we come up with these ideas, or is there actually something there that gives us a reason to think up with these things? I don't really know the answer, but I think it's an interesting question.
It could be with the cyclical rate of how sometimes we've talked in the past, where we get a certain amount of technology and something happens and knocks us back, and sort of that one, I think I made the joke, it's like that's why we like sun gods so much, because the sun gods fry our AI that we created. The AI takes over and enslaves us, and then the sun sends one of its, it has one of those
solar flare and
EMPs and nukes everything on the earth, and then we praise the sun.
We come back from the ashes and bury the machines and raise. And did we ever do a Matrix episode? Because
we've hit on stuff for it, but I don't think we've completely done,
because I'd really like to look at some of the symbolism in the Matrix, and particularly the way that it shifts between the film. So you'll think you have the symbolism figured out in one film, and then the next film the roles are reversed and the good guys are playing the bad guys in the next, at least in my opinion. I've never watched the Wachowskis talk about it, but considering the way they did the whole they became the Wachowski sisters, I think I might be onto something, because I think that's what they were kind of maybe hinting at a little bit. Is first things are one way and then they're another, and that happens a lot. But I think that's about all I got for it on tonight. Do you want to add anything before we go to read about John Sevier?
Mm-hmm. Not really. That's we've already said.
Okay. So this the 23rd, this coming weekend, down in Knoxville at Marble Springs. Let me find this. I think I just sent it to myself in the email. I don't think I opened it yet. But in Marble Springs down here in Knoxville, that's where Governor John Sevier lived the last 15 years of his life. Let me find him here. Daggone it. I guess I didn't send it to myself. I was going to tell you about the General Morgan Inn, but we'll do that next time. Because I want to tell you about John Sevier, because he's having this event down here. And I'm used to my small keyboard. Marble Springs down there in Knoxville, it's a state historic site, and it's the home where John Sevier died, or where he spent his last years of his life. And they're doing an event down there where you can go and take the tour and learn all about John Sevier and all that good stuff. And they actually would, I don't know if I'm a history buff, but I don't think I'd want to have a wedding there. You know, your wife probably doesn't want to have a wedding, or your fiance probably doesn't want to have a wedding at the John Sevier Historic Site. Some of them might, but they do offer wedding rentals. They do.
Fair. I mean, I haven't seen the property.
I mean, it just may be that the property's cool. I'm just gonna say your wife probably not into it for the John Sevier reason. If that's why maybe she is. But
sometimes, you know, when you look at like the artist rendition for John Sevier, when you scroll down just a bit, you know how a lot of them, it's like, you know, they had all this like the rosy cheeks and like their powdered hair and stuff like that. Whenever you think about it kind of introspectively, whenever the Native Americans saw them, how fucking scary they are.
Yeah. Why? Because these guys are you know, dark skin, red skin as they were called, and then some people actually think they weren't actually referring, when they were saying redskins, that originally that wasn't referring to the Native Americans, but that was referring to drunks. But you know, who knows? It's one of those kind of lost to history things. Yeah. Because you find some references, and I think of things like, I misinterpreted sayings all the time when I was a kid. Like I would hear a slang or something, and I would think it meant one thing, and it meant something totally different. But
you don't find out till like 10 years later. Yeah, I didn't mean that.
But if I wrote a book about it, you know, and somebody found it hundreds of years later, they might be like, oh well, when they said, you know, this thing,
we found little Cliff's journals.
Yeah. So who knows if that actually means anything? But either way, the John Sevier, yeah, they would have had the white face and the powdered wig and the red cheeks, because they drink like madmen, you know, drinking Frontier whiskey.
First, you know, we're coming over and they're getting off the boats, and they're all kind of emaciated anyway, because they've not had good water, because all the water's had alcohol in it to preserve it. Yeah. So they're all gaunt, and then they have all this makeup and weird shit on. It's like
And like you said, the big white powdered wigs and John
powdered wigs and, like, you know, the makeup, the rosy cheeks. And
well, John Sevier, he was a frontiersman. He was a hard drinking, hard fighting son of a bitch, and we've talked about him a lot on the show. He was the leader of the movement of the state of Franklin, not because he wanted there to be a state of Franklin, because the people who wanted there to be a state of Franklin said, we need a leader, and John Sevier's the guy. And John Sevier was like, I don't really necessarily want to, but if y'all feel like that we need to have our own state and represent ourselves here, then yeah, I'll go for it and I'll fight for it. And he even got captured and imprisoned for it, and they later pardoned him, which he ended up, after being pardoned by the governor of North Carolina, he became a North Carolina state legislature, which then he pushed an agenda and voted for the creation of Tennessee. So even though they didn't create the state of Franklin, he was able to help the people of this area actually create their own state that they had governorship over, and they made him the first governor. But before that, he was a fighter in the Revolutionary War, and more prominently, he was at the Battle of Kings Mountain. We've talked about the Battle of Kings Mountain a few times on this show too, and we've talked about John Sevier a few times. But one of the things that we mentioned way back in the day was the Battle of Island Flats, and in this battle, William Blount led some men to. They fought a bunch of Cherokee warriors over in Kingsport, and at this time, it's important to remember there's a lot of nuance to this whole. Settlers and Indians thing, right? Mm-hmm. Because the Appalachian settlers, the Englishmen, the Irish, and Scots who were settling here, they actually wanted to be friends with the Cherokee, and the Cherokee mostly wanted to be friends with them. But the English were trading
with... basically fed them full of shit and said, hey, they're evil. You need to kill them.
And they also told him, if you don't start trading, if you don't cut all ties with the settlers, we're not going to trade with you anymore. We're not going to give you all these nice things that you've come to accustom from us. We're not going to be buying any more of your tobacco. We're going to cut off all ties with you, and then you're going to be our enemy too. So a lot of Dragging Canoe famously went up and down. And he convinced all these younger Cherokee chiefs and Chickamauga and Creek chiefs that they should join with the English and attack the colonial settlers. And this is back in 1776. And there was the Battle of Island Flats, where William Blount led a cadre of men over to Kingsport, and they met some of these younger Cherokees, including Dragging Canoe, in battle. And this ended up being a fucking hand-to-hand tomahawk, sword, hatchet, and knife battle for the most part. And William Blount led his men to victory. I think it was like they killed 13 Cherokee, and the Cherokee killed 4 of the settlers, and there was a whole lot of injured on the Cherokee, and Dragging Canoe broke his leg, and they retreated. But this was one of the first major battles where the colonists faced off against the Cherokee, and there was this whole idea that, because the Cherokee were experienced in guerrilla warfare and hatchets and stuff like this, that they weren't going to stand a chance with them. Well, Blount led his men to victory, and they proved actually, well, we can take these guys on. We don't have to fear them like we, did, because there were stories like, if you remember the movie, the Mel Gibson, The Patriot, the way they were talking about Mel Gibson in that movie, he's like a ghost. He just moves through the trees, and this is the way that they were talking about the Indians at the time. And again,
that's also how we beat the British too.
Yeah, we learned those tricks. Yeah. Well, we talk often about the Battle of Kings Mountain, and a lot of people, and we, like we said earlier, the Indians and the colonists mostly got along until the Brits got in there and turned them against one another. So, which ended up being decades long, and really still continues to this day, because we still have Indian reservations. And that was one thing I meant to mention. Somebody mentioned on the Appalachian podcast or no, it wasn't Appalachian podcast. It was a guy after that. It was on Tinfoil Hat. But he mentioned that he thought that there were Bigfoot reservations. And that when we spot Bigfoots, it's one of these that have gotten off the reservation. It's basically like our homeless people. If you see, there was actually a big Bigfoot society, and they are mostly underground, and some of them exist on the surface within reservations. But when you see a Bigfoot in the wild, that there are like men in black chasing the Bigfoot down to put it back to the reservation. Now I don't know if that sounded like a fun idea to me for a movie, if nothing else.
It's wild, but you're like, it's more tangible than a lot of other things.
Yeah, but anyway, back to John Sevier. So John Sevier was. It was in the wake of the Battle of Island Flats that we get to today's story of John Sevier coming back from the Battle of Kings Mountain. Now, as we've discussed on the show before, at the time of the Battle of Kings Mountain, there was also, like I said, the English was going around, and so was Dragging Canoe, trying to convince the Indians to attack the white settlers. Well, they did convince a lot of them, and one of the heroes of the Revolution was Nancy Ward, who married an English school teacher. She was an Indian, she was a Cherokee Indian, and she was on their high council. And she actually leaked information to a prisoner and set him loose and let him come back out that, hey, these Cherokee that were acting like your friends and you've been trading with, and everything's been cool. You've leased your land from them. They're actually going to send parties to attack you guys. So Nancy was like, this is dishonorable, and she actually went around to the older chiefs and convinced a lot of them, hey, don't listen to the British. Don't attack the white settlers. We've been getting along great with them. Why would we attack them? So she convinces a lot of them, but her cousin, Dragon Canoe, is not convinced, and he convinces a lot of the younger chiefs, and a lot of them even overthrow the older chiefs because the older chiefs refuse to attack. So anyway, it's with all this in mind, we get to today's story, which is John Sevier coming back from the Battle of Kings Mountain. He's leading his men. They've had a thorough victory over Major Patrick Ferguson, who had threatened to come up here and take the guns and burn the cities of anybody who wouldn't surrender to the crown. So they went down there and said, "The hell you will!" And they surrounded him on Kings Mountain, killed Ferguson, captured all his men. Anyway, John Sevier and his men were on this mission, and when they were on their way home, they got wind from some scouts of a large mass of Indians moving their way. And they had not heard from Nancy Ward's released prisoner that the Indians were coming their way. And they, assumedly thought these guys were their friends. So they start getting a little bit closer, and they realize that I think it's Samuel Tipton is with them too. And that John Sevier realizes they're walking into a half-moon ambush, and he pauses his guys and says, let's attack either end of it. And they do, and they start the battle. They end up winning. In the battle, though, John Sevier, to give you an idea, versus today's, I think he was a colonel at the time, versus today's officers, John Sevier was charging into battle on his horse, like first guy in there. And there's one account in this battle, the Battle of Boyd's Creek, where he is run out of pistol ammo, and he goes at an Indian on his horse, gets knocked off the horse, and they're fighting. Sevier's fighting him with two swords. The Indian has an empty musket, and he's fighting him with it. And it's looking like the Indian is about to get the better of Sevier, and an unnamed infantryman just walks up to the Indian and makes sure that his commanding officer is the victory of the engagement there. But anyway, they ended up winning there at Boyd's Creek, and that actually was, it's a lot less mentioned. It was, I think it was 2 weeks after. It was December of 1776. So it was really close after they were on their way home for the Battle of Kings Mountain. And this group of Indians here was one of many who were closing in on the white settlements in the area, and they were basically flanking the other settlements that were coming in. So Nancy Ward, she saved the western side of the settlements by releasing the prisoner who was able to convey the message that they were about to attack. And then John Sevier actually saved the southeastern flank. That was the flanking forces that were going to come up there and take out places like Fort Watauga and all the different settlements up there along the North Carolina and Tennessee border. So it's not as mentioned as much as the Battle of Island Flats, Battle of Kings Mountain, or even the Battle of Island Flats. But it's still a very significant battle in the Revolutionary War, and it was a very significant portion in the battle in the history of the United States, and a story in John Sevier's life which led to him becoming the first governor. Like I said, after they were unsuccessful in forming Franklin, he was successful in forming Tennessee, and was thereby, he didn't want to be governor of Tennessee either, but the people of Tennessee basically were like, you got to lead us, man, you got to. And so he was like, okay. So he was basically the George Washington of Tennessee. So a lot of respect to John Sevier. A lot of people give him a bad name because they say he was fighting the Indians, so he must have been a bad guy. I don't think he was a bad guy. He if you read his journals, if you read his letters, he wanted to be friends with these people. He was not trying to fight them. He didn't want to kill them. his hand was forced, and he did the best with what he was dealt with, at least with what he was given. At least that's what it sounds like to me from reading his writings and his letters and the histories of him at the time. And I think he's a pretty inspiring character, and there's a reason he's the first governor of the state, and there's a reason that the county's named after him. There's a town named after him. You got schools named after him all over the place. There's a reason for that. We really appreciate you joining us tonight, though, for our 100th episode. It's about time to call it, and we will see you on Thursday. Is there anything you want to add to us, add for us before we get out of here tonight, Dustin?
Nope.
All right.
Trying to think. I'm like, no.
So be sure and tell us your thoughts on the great old ones in the comments. Do you think they're under Appalachia? Do you think they're somewhere under a river in the, maybe the Tigris or Euphrates? Do you think maybe they are related to the old Babylon religions? Do you think they are older than time itself? Do you think that the religions are just man's way to try to describe the powers that, animate and propel the universe and all life within it? Or is there actually somebody out there who's coming down and explaining these things and people writing it down? A lot of, if you go back through the history of philosophy and religion, a lot of it is done by deduction, and it's pretty amazing. We think philosophy doesn't have really a place today because it's come to the point of kind of absurd questions, and it has really for thousands of years. But if you read into some of these ancient philosophers and how they decided the way the things that they think about God, you can kind of see you can see how there's a logic to reality, and that by logic is how they come to the conclusion of what God must be and what creation must be. So as long as everything operates under logic, then they might be right. But does it?
And to answer the question brought on at the beginning of the show, the pig cryptid is named Squonk.
Squonk. All right. Did anybody give us that in the chat, or did you have to look it up?
I just looked it up right then because I was like, wait, I want to give this some closure.
Darn it, Dalton. And I didn't even get into this, but man, I found this book on Google. Curatio Solaria. And I'm not sure what I found here, but this only has a preview with every other pages. But I do want to leave you with the first, if I can figure out how to get to the first page of this book, because there we go.
My ebooks are hard.
Yes. First, I want to show you the cover. How do I get this to full screen? That's what I want here. Alright. So here's the cover. And just sometimes in my research, I just come across weird things. And this was one I was going to include in the show tonight, but I didn't really get a chance to bring it up. But I'm going to read you, to take us out, I'm going to read you the first stanza. This is a line of verse, and it sounds almost like prophecy. It reads like prophecy. It's ballads, verse, and prose. But it was written... It's called Solariad of Serasius Astarius Jesuvius Gothinus by Curatio Solario under the guidance of Solaria from 2006 to 2011. And let's read the first. Some pages are omitted from the book preview. Oh man, it omitted the one that I wanted to read here. See, it was here last time. But I'll start here anyway. See if I can find it. See, page 89 to 90 are not shown in this preview. Well, that sucks. I gotta find one to read here now, though.
Can you paraphrase it?
No. Okay, well, I'll read this one to you here. Woven from starlight, Lost souls float and dream of hope. Flowers bloom from secret eyes. What do you see in the eyes of water? Our souls are woven from starlight. Lost souls reach out empty hands. Sun illuminates bones of your face. What do you see in my open eyes? Our souls are woven from starlight. Lost souls gather in a pool glade. We eat apples, tasting juice of light. Who reaches out and touches moon. Our souls are woven from starlight. Lost souls wake from gloomy dream. Hands touch faces and sing names. What glows warm in aching hearts? Our souls are woven from starlight. So there you have it. Thank you for joining us tonight for our 100th episode. We'll see you on Thursday night where Tim and I are going to get into the news and current events of the week. We're so glad to have you with us, and we'll see you next time. Later, everybody.
Bye.